Today, we begin with an address that global leaders, U.S. officials, and longtime allies had anticipated, quietly worried about, and privately prepared for. An address that unfolded not over weeks, but in a single appearance. A single appearance that reverberated through foreign capitals. A single appearance that triggered urgent diplomatic recalculations. A single appearance that left even seasoned observers visibly unsettled. What Donald Trump did today crossed a line that international institutions had hoped would still hold. And when that line broke, the world did not hesitate. They responded with concern, confusion, and unmistakable unease. For weeks now, there had been signals, not official briefings, not formal announcements, just signals that Trump was preparing something unscripted. Trump has been unpredictable, yes, but he has also been methodical in his unpredictability. His public appearances have followed a certain pattern, almost a ritual: long pauses, extended digressions, personal grievances woven into geopolitical commentary. But what set off alarm bells in foreign ministries and intelligence agencies this time was that the pattern went silent. Analysts who monitor presidential behavior and rhetorical signaling know the indicators: the sudden drop in prepared remarks, the absence of advanced talking points, the lack of coordination with diplomatic channels, the abrupt disappearance of message discipline. All of that went quiet, and whenever Trump goes quiet, it means something is about to get loud. Early today, officials monitoring the event detected what they described as extended deviation from prepared material, including self-referential commentary that had not been observed at this scale in over a year. These are the kinds of rhetorical shifts that Trump only deploys when he is signaling something very specific: defiance, dominance, or disregard for constraint. Observers didn't know which category this fell into, or whether it fell into all three at once. But what they did know was that Trump was changing posture, and when a former U.S. president shifts posture without explanation, even by a small measure, the world pays attention. The reaction issued by global leaders tonight was not normal, it was not routine, it was not symbolic, it was urgent. Diplomatic sources after emergency consultations described Trump's speech as unstructured, self-referential, and perhaps most importantly, destabilizing because it lacked strategic clarity. But signaling only works if the audience hesitates. The world did not. In fact, the response today was among the fastest collective reactions we've seen to a single speech in recent memory. Within hours of the address, allies began requesting clarification, not through press conferences, but through secure channels. These weren't ordinary inquiries. These were high-level diplomatic checks, the kind governments make when they are preparing for policy volatility. Tonight, multiple diplomatic sources confirmed that governments moved to contain narrative damage before Trump's remarks could harden into perception. They didn't counter Trump directly. They didn't escalate publicly. They focused on damage control. In other words, they targeted interpretation, the component that would have made the speech operational. This is what made the reaction so urgent. Trump's speech wasn't just rambling, it was actionable rhetoric. Left unchecked, it could alter alliances, unsettle markets, and invite miscalculation. So the response came with force, not recklessly, not emotionally, but strategically. They didn't amplify the chaos. They didn't mirror the tone. They isolated the signal. And here's where the story becomes even more revealing. Sources now believe Trump's speech was designed to test the tolerance of allies after months of political strain. He wanted to see whether the world would normalize instability, but instead, the opposite happened. Governments didn't normalize it, they contained it, and they did so in a way that was so disciplined, so coordinated that even Trump noticed. You don't get Trump's attention easily, but today the world did. Analysts speaking under anonymity described the speech as strategic narcissism, a way to dominate the narrative without committing to policy. But the response proved something crucial. The system is still watching, and it is still responding. As reports continued coming in throughout the day, we learned more about the scale of the response. European officials convened internal briefings within hours. Asian allies issued synchronized diplomatic language. Market analysts flagged heightened rhetorical risk. This wasn't just commentary. This wasn't just optics. This was containment. This was collective recalibration. And recalibration is the one thing Trump has struggled with. Remember, Trump believed he could dominate attention without consequence. He could blur lines without response. He could speak without constraint. But tonight, the opposite is happening. The world is responding. The guardrails are engaging. The system is pushing back, quietly but firmly. What makes this moment so fragile and so revealing is that Trump's speech comes at a time when global stability is already strained. Allies want reassurance, markets want predictability, voters want coherence, institutions want restraint. Trump is balancing none of those pressures, and when leaders abandon balance, they're not acting from strength, they're acting from pressure, they're acting from vulnerability. Official reactions now quietly circulating through diplomatic channels were designed to signal that the world is not willing to absorb unpredictability without consequence. Officials described the speech as inconsistent with responsible leadership. That is diplomatic language for, "This cannot continue." You don't hear that tone unless something serious is at stake. Meanwhile, world leaders addressed their publics in measured, controlled remarks. They emphasized stability. They emphasized continuity. They emphasized calm. These were not speeches for applause. They were speeches for reassurance. Here is what makes this even more concerning. The speech did not exist in isolation. Alongside, political allies echoed the tone, media amplification intensified, narrative polarization accelerated. When multiple signals align, it means something larger is underway. Analysts are now considering several possibilities. One, Trump is testing narrative dominance. Another, he is probing global tolerance. A third, the most concerning, is that he is eroding norms deliberately. But today, the world removed one option. They refused to normalize it. What we are watching now is a test of restraint. Trump wants to see how far he can go. The world wants to show it still matters. Institutions want to prevent miscalculation. Allies want to prevent collapse. Sources say monitoring has intensified. They say follow-up messaging is underway. They say contingency planning has accelerated. And they say Trump's decision to speak in this way is likely part of a broader strategy to dominate attention. But the world is not disengaging. It is responding, calmly, deliberately, decisively. As the days go on, we will learn more about what Trump hoped to achieve, but what we already know is this: the response mattered. It stabilized perception. It slowed escalation. What happens next depends on what Trump does next. If he escalates, this moment will be remembered as a warning. If he recalibrates, the system has already shown it is ready. And tonight, for the first time in months, Trump appears to be quiet. The airwaves are calm. The messaging has slowed. Too calm. And when Trump is quiet, it means he is planning, because tonight, Trump learned something again. Attention has limits. Institutions still exist, and the world is still watching. This story is far from over. But tonight, one thing is clear. The speech landed, the response mattered, and the next move will define what comes next.